At 30,000 feet, over the high plateaus of Arizona, the sky hums a soundless warning. It's not the engine, though the T-38 beneath me growls with age and defiance. Something in the air, like pressure tightening against the fuselage. The way animals feel an earthquake before it hits. I've flown too long not to recognize that kind of silence. The voice crackles through the comms, stiff with command protocol. Unregistered aircraft, this is NORAD. You are entering a restricted defense airspace. Identify immediately or divert. Repeat, divert now. I breathe out through my nose, glance at the NAV screen. My flight plan's clean. Civilian corridor, fully cleared. Confirmed 3 hours ago from Wichita Tower. I toggle the comms, Control, this is civilian flight Ghost Tango 38. I'm in corridor 3 Bravo, transponder active, ID transmitting. Confirm clearance. Static. Then a harder voice. Negative, Ghost Tango 38. No current clearance. Updated restricted zone effective 1400 Zulu. You are trespassing in a Tier 1 surveillance perimeter. Stand by for escort. My hand stills on the yoke. 3 new contacts ping my radar. North by northeast. High speed. F-22 Raptors. They close fast, invisible until they aren't. Then they bloom like silver teeth in the blue. I track them by instinct before the system does. Formation tight. Weapons unarmed but hard-locked. I don't flinch. But the quiet inside me shifts. One Raptor swings low across my nose, a deliberate sweep. The kind you make when the bird you're circling has no business being up here. Then, a younger voice on the open channel. No urgency. Just dry amusement. Well, look at that. Museum piece at 30,000. What is that, a talon? Another joins in. Did NORAD scramble us for a ghost plane? What is this airshow day? They're mocking me. They don't know who's in this cockpit. I let the words pass. Still listening. A third voice now. More serious. Ghost Tango 38, identify pilot and last point of origin. I press the button. My voice is quiet. Level. Falcon 1, this is Falcon Ghost. The channel goes dead. No chatter. No quips. No orders. Even the Raptors hesitate. In the high stillness I hear it, the air holding its breath. The call sign drops like a match into dry grass. The kind of name that doesn't belong in the open anymore. It was never listed. Never repeated. But some still remember. And now the sky remembers too. 10 years ago I disappeared. Not in the way they write into reports. No final sortie. No medals at a podium. Just silence. The kind that sticks behind your ribs. We were deep in the mountains. An operation that technically never happened in a country we were never in. Intelligence had called it an evac in hostile terrain. That's the kind of language they use when they want things to look clean. It wasn't clean. We dropped in under the cover of a dry front that passed too quickly. 47 U.S. Personnel stranded behind broken supply lines. Communications tower hit. Extraction window miscalculated by 3 hours. Long enough for the enemy to regroup. I was leading Eagle Flight, 2 rotary escorts, 1 medevac. 5 clicks out, we lost visual contact with the forward team. The LZ lit up before we reached the ridge. Our rear chopper took fire. Went down fast. I remember the scream through comms, the rotors, the sudden sickening silence afterward. Command issued the call. Abort. But I could still see their heat signatures through the trees. I saw the wounded dragging their own across a clearing the size of a swimming pool. It was suicide. No pilot would have gone back in. I went back. Broke formation. Cut altitude under radar. The ground was a riddle of wreckage and fire. I landed long enough for the surviving Marines to throw bodies into the hold. Some were barely breathing. Some had already stopped. I pulled them out. Made 2 trips. Lost my co-pilot on the second. He took a round through the neck during takeoff. I flew the rest of the mission with his blood on my gloves. Back at base, the debrief was brief. I was told I'd ignored protocol. That command had officially disavowed the mission before extraction. My data logs were confiscated. My report rewritten. The event, as far as the world was concerned, never occurred. But 47 names lived. Captain Luis Perez was one of them. He was unconscious when we lifted off. Shrapnel lodged in his thigh. Lost enough blood to kill a bull, but he held on. I only knew his name later. A note slipped through unofficial channels. A single message. You saved my life. My son will know your name, even if no one else does. That was the last time I heard from anyone. They offered me a lateral discharge under quiet commendation. I signed without looking. They didn't want a story. They wanted closure, preferably off paper. So I left. Bought an old hangar in Kansas, the kind with a tin roof and faded signage from the Cold War. Rebuilt E-38 from scraps and stripped paint. Took me almost 2 years. But she flew. I named her Ghost. I didn't fly shows. Didn't wear the uniform. Just filed for fly-ins and Veterans Days under civilian registration. Most people assumed I was someone's widow. The old kind of pilot, the one who helped others but never flew herself. 6 months ago, I waited in line at the Wichita Municipal for a fly-in discount. Paperwork folded. ID faded. The cashier couldn't have been more than 19. Thin arms, smirk for a face. He glanced at my card. Claire Mitchell. He looked up. Wait, you flew that thing? He pointed to the T-38 I'd parked on the outer ramp. It was parked at an angle only a pilot would use. I didn't answer. He chuckled to himself. Didn't know they let women fly jets back then. Back then, I didn't even frown. Just took my receipt and walked out into the sun. Later that night, I sat inside the Ghost. No headset. Just the smell of oil and long memory. The cockpit felt smaller than it used to. Or maybe I just fit differently now. Somewhere between that last mission and this quiet exile, something hollowed out. I didn't leave the service. I was erased from it. They don't make statues for people like me. Don't hand out plaques for missions that were never logged. And the young ones, they only know what they're told. What gets approved for print. They don't know what gets left in the silence. But I still fly. Not for recognition. Not for revenge. For them. For the ones who never made it back. For the ones whose names were buried deeper than mine. For the ghosts. The morning sky over Arizona should have been empty. That's what my map said. What my clearance confirmed. I'd filed the flight plan like I always did. Early, clean, redundant copies to both tower and the civilian registry. Cruising altitude steady. No deviation. At 1402 Zulu, the corridor I was flying, civilian 3 Bravo, changed. No alert. No ping. The military updated the zone silently. Expanded the boundaries of a Tier 1 no-fly perimeter due to what they called strategic movement exercises. It hadn't hit the civilian network yet. It wouldn't for another hour. But NORAD already knew. Their birds were already airborne. I saw the contacts emerge on radar like teeth, fast, angular. Their transponders confirmed it. 3 F-22 Raptors. First contact came at 1408. Unregistered aircraft, you are entering protected airspace. You are not cleared for this corridor. Divert immediately or face enforcement escort. I repeated my clearance. Gave timestamp confirmation. Civilian ID. Registered aircraft. They didn't acknowledge it. Didn't care. 2 Raptors hung back. One swung forward, shadowing my flank. Ghost Tango 38, this is Raptor lead. You are being ordered to divert due to violation of active strategic airspace. Repeat. Change heading or we will initiate intercept procedure. Their tone wasn't aggressive. It was confident. The kind of voice that believes what it's doing is right. The kind of voice that has never been lied to by command. My screen stayed clear. No warning flags on civilian net. But their radar was locked. Inside the cockpit, I exhaled slow. Ran a systems check. T-38 holding steady. Fuel clean. VOR beacon solid. I pressed the comms again. Raptor lead, this is a non-military pre-cleared flight. I have no record of updated perimeter protocols. Please confirm. Nothing. Then one of the Raptors broke radio silence. Young voice. Cocky. Looks like she's still flying a museum piece. Is that a Talon? Can't believe this crate's still in the air. Another voice laughed. You sure it's not one of those Vietnam showbirds? Probably runs on faith and duct tape. A third chimed in. Command really scrambled us for this? I thought we were intercepting a threat, not babysitting grandmas with wings. They couldn't see me. Not really. Didn't know who I was. What this jet had done. What I had done. But one of them should have. Raptor 2, call sign 91 Fox, was flown by Lieutenant Diego Perez. The name meant nothing to the others. But to me it was a quiet tremor. I hadn't heard that name since the field extraction 10 years ago. Since I'd pulled his father, Captain Luis Perez, out of a compound collapsing under mortar fire. Carried him one-armed into the hold of a skidding medevac under night flare and steel rain. His father had written once through back channels. Not formal. Just a folded piece of paper left inside a requisition envelope. You saved my life. I told my boy your name. That boy was now flying one of the Raptors on my 6. Weapon systems hot. Radar locked. Unaware he owed his father's breath to the woman he was now treating as a threat. Perez hadn't spoken yet. But I imagined him inside the cockpit. Reading data. Seeing the aging signature of AT-38 with an ID that didn't match any of the files he trained on. Wondering what an antique was doing slicing air at altitude inside a military zone. Command would have briefed him poorly. Gave him threat levels, not context. He would be waiting for confirmation or permission. And then he'd do what all good soldiers do, obey. I heard it in the way Raptor Lead's voice hardened. Prepare for visual ID sweep. Titan formation. Lock on confirmed. Raptor 2's voice entered the channel calm and clear. Command requesting final rules of engagement. Civilian aircraft non-compliant. Recommendation. Escort to Flagstaff base for immediate interrogation. And just like that, I wasn't a pilot anymore. I was a target. A suspect. A relic they didn't recognize and so couldn't trust. There was a flicker in the channel. One voice, Raptor 3, hesitated. She's holding steady. No evasive maneuvers. But the current was already flowing. The machine was moving. Protocol erases hesitation. I reach for the emergency channel. Flip the guard. There are codes pilots can use. Frequencies saved for moments when identity must override rank. But I didn't use the code. I used the name. This is Falcon Ghost. 3 syllables. A name that never made the news. Never appeared in the logs. But that echoed through the ranks like a shadow. There was silence on the channel. Hard silence. One by one, the radar locks dropped. And inside one Raptor, a pilot with the name Perez on his chest looked down at his instruments, then out his canopy, toward a jet he thought was extinct. His voice didn't come immediately. But when it did, it was quiet. Command, confirm ID. I could hear the disbelief wrapped in recognition. The sky didn't move, but it remembered. Repeat that last call sign, came the voice from NORAD command. The operator's voice was calm but clipped. You could hear the backroom scramble, keyboards, file pulls, someone speaking behind a wall of noise suppression. The way command sounds when it doesn't know if it's just made a terrible mistake. I keyed the mic again. This is Falcon Ghost. Aircraft ID Ghost Tango 38. Former designation inactive. Confirming visual presence of 3 Raptors. Holding altitude. Silence. Then the lead Raptor slowed. Not abrupt. Just a subtle deceleration, enough to signal a shift. Enough for me to see his angle ease, his posture change. Less predatory. More cautious. From somewhere inside the NORAD system, a second voice replaced the first. Ghost Tango 38, this is Command Central. Confirming flight path. Disengage from current protocol. Raptors, maintain distance. No engagement. Repeat, stand down and maintain holding pattern. Another pause. Falcon Ghost is verified. I heard the hesitation, even in that statement. Because you don't verify ghosts. You confirm them by absence. Inside the second Raptor, Perez had gone quiet. For a long moment, he didn't transmit. But I knew what he was doing. Trying to make sense of a name that was never supposed to surface. The others didn't know the story. Not like he did. Then his voice broke through the static. This time, stripped of rank, stripped of distance. Ma'am, this is Lieutenant Diego Perez. A beat. My father is Luis Perez. He told me, he said someone got him out. That there was a pilot who disobeyed orders. He always called you the ghost. Said no one ever confirmed you even existed. I didn't speak. Just let him keep going. He said when you came down through the smoke, it was like something out of the old books. The kind of flying that wasn't about rules. Just instinct. Just grit. His voice faltered. And then you vanished. I clicked the mic once. Not a reply. Just acknowledgement. The old language. Between pilots, that means, I heard you. I remember. Perez didn't rush. Ma'am, permission to fly your wing. He asked it like it was sacred. Not a request from one aircraft to another, but from a generation raised on stories asking permission to be part of one. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I used the ghost slightly to starboard. A half-degree shift in invitation. He took the signal without another word and slid into position. There's a kind of silence in the air when two jets align, when their wakes match, when the tension smooths. I felt it settle into the wings, like the sky had been waiting for this moment. The third Raptor broke silence next. Raptor lead requesting to remain at respectful range. Respectful. Not tactical. Not safe. Respectful. That word meant more than they probably knew. Granted, I said simply. We flew in formation for 13 minutes. No one said anything else. Below us, the Arizona desert burned gold and red, broken plateaus casting long shadows that stretched like arms. I could see the bones of old canyons, places older than our maps, older than our names. Up here, that's what time feels like. Weightless. Perez held formation with precision. His flight logs would never mark this. There'd be no mission debrief, no footage. But I knew he'd remember it all the same. And so would I. At 14:27 Zulu, I opened the mic again. Raptors, this is Ghost Tango 38. Resuming independent flight. No escort required. Another beat. Thank you. Perez didn't respond immediately. Then, ma'am, my father says he still owes you a drink. I almost smiled. Tell him he paid in full. With that, I throttled gently forward. Let the ghost pull ahead. Felt the Raptors begin to fall back, respectful as promised. As they faded from radar, I glanced at the panel once more. No warning lights. No damage. Just altitude, fuel, and airspeed. Exactly what I needed. Behind me, in the stillness left by our passage, I imagined Perez sitting quiet in his cockpit, listening to the sound of the engines, thinking about a name that had once been a story, now real, now flying just ahead of him. Falcon Ghost. A call sign no one used anymore. Because some names aren't for protocol. They're for memory. For the ones who remember why we fly at all. They say silence doesn't echo in the sky. But I've flown long enough to know that isn't true. The moment I banked away from those Raptors, the air felt different. Like something had lifted. Not relief, not even pride. Just a kind of deep settling. Something had found its place again. I landed 3 hours later at a small private strip west of Flagstaff. One of those little fields where the hangars have rusted corners and the radio tower still runs on half-broken switches. The guy who waved me in wasn't even looking. Didn't see the dust trail the Raptors left. Didn't see the way my wings still held their formation curve. That's fine. Most people aren't supposed to see. I wheeled the ghost into the hangar, powered her down, and sat in the cockpit for a while. Just breathing. The old seat creaked under me. My right shoulder ached from an injury that never healed clean. I flexed my fingers. The blood moved slow. A small pulse beneath skin and callus. I climbed down just as the sun cut low behind the ridge. That's when I saw the envelope. Taped to the door of the hangar. No postage. No markings. Just a single word written in clean, capital letters. Respect. Inside, a photograph. Taken from the cockpit of an F-22, its digital HUD barely visible. My T-38 at center frame, rising against the backdrop of layered clouds, like a black silhouette cutting through history. Someone had scribbled on the back in thick ink. For the safest sky in the world. D.P. I stood there for a long time holding it. The metal of the hangar cooling at my back. He didn't have to send it. He didn't have to remember. But he did. And not just him. Because in the weeks that followed, the stories began. Not on headlines. Not on official logs. But where they mattered in the mouths of pilots. In barracks. In briefings spoken low between sessions. An old pilot. An antique jet. A ghost call sign. They said the Raptors turned back. Said NORAD stood down. Said someone flew through a corridor locked to everyone else and the sky opened for her. I didn't speak to any of them. Didn't confirm. Didn't deny. But letters began to arrive. Not from officers. From cadets. Handwritten. Careful. Like they weren't sure if I'd read them. One came from a girl named Nia, a third year at the Air Force Academy. She wrote, "They told us legends don't matter. That flight is math. Data. Discipline. But I think maybe legends are how we remember why we learn the rest." Another came from a boy whose father had served in Operation Talon, the one that never made the news. His note was just one sentence. "My father said you flew like the rules couldn't catch you." I kept each one. Didn't file them. Didn't display them. Just folded them into a canvas bag I use for spare manuals. Every few days I'd find another slipped under the hangar door. No return. Just memory finding its way home. Then came the invitation. Thick envelope. Embossed seal. United States Air Force Academy commencement address, honoring distinguished aviators. No rank. No title. No photograph. But someone had drawn a symbol next to my name. A hawk. Wings tilted mid-dive. I considered tossing it. I didn't need stages. Didn't want applause. But something in the ink, the slight tremble in the pen stroke, told me it hadn't come from protocol. It had come from belief. So I flew. Wore my flight jacket, old and some worn. No insignia left. Just scarring in the leather. I stood behind the curtains as the commandant introduced me, not by name, but by call sign. Some of you know her as Rumor, he said. Others heard of her only in half-finished stories. But she flew so others could land. And today we remember her not with rank, but with silence. I walked out into a room of cadets who had stood. Not clapping, just standing. I looked into their eyes. Some curious, some reverent. All watching. I said, when you fly long enough, the noise becomes background. What stays with you is the silence. The breath before a call. The stillness before a storm. The moment you realize you're not flying for yourself anymore. They didn't move. You fly for the ones who can't. For the ones waiting on the ground. And sometimes for the ones who don't believe you can. I looked toward the back wall where they placed a photograph. My T-38, flanked by Raptors. The caption below read, "Courage has no expiration date." I stepped off stage without waiting for reaction. The silence followed me all the way out the door. That night, I didn't go back to the hangar. I went up. Filed no plan. Carried no comms. Just took the ghost back into the open dark. And from tower to tower, I saw them. Green blips. Jets rising from distant bases. Some followed. Some held position. But none crossed my path. They weren't tracking. They were witnessing. You don't chase ghosts. You watch them until they disappear. 3 months later, a new plaque appeared in the honor hall of the Air Force Academy. It wasn't big. No ceremony. No unveiling. Just a frame tucked under the old display of reconnaissance aircraft near the exit where most visitors never looked twice. Inside it, a weathered photo of a T-38 banking sharply against dusk. The tail markings were barely visible. The nose slightly scorched. But the image held something no high-resolution camera could ever capture, the posture of defiance in the arc of her wings. Below the photo, a bronze placard. Falcon Ghost. Courage has no expiration date. There were no ribbons. No dates. Just that. Cadets started noticing. At first, a few leaned in during late-night walkthroughs. Then they told others. Soon it became part of unofficial tradition. You didn't graduate until you visited the ghost. By the following class, instructors began using her call sign in case studies. Not as data. As presence. You want to understand mission over protocol? One colonel said. Look at Falcon Ghost. Then came the question someone always asked. Is she real? And someone always replied she was more real than the ones who wrote the rules. I was invited back once not to fly, not to speak. Just to be present. They didn't announce it. Didn't list it on the program. But during the final week of graduation, one of the instructors walked into my hangar in Kansas. He stood at the door and didn't speak for a full minute. Then he said, the cadets are asking for you. Not your face. Not your credentials. Just you. I flew in before dawn. Parked at the outer edge of the training field. No one greeted me. No fanfare. That's the way I preferred it. They didn't seat me up front. I stood in the shadow behind the bleachers, flight jacket zipped to the neck, hands in pockets. The graduates filed in like they always had, crisp, white, sure of nothing but the weight of their future. I watched them move with the stiffness of people who still think every step matters. They didn't see me, but they knew I was there. During the final roll call, the commandant paused, then turned slightly toward the back of the platform. He spoke without looking directly at me. When you are asked how to survive the impossible, he said, remember the sky isn't something you conquer. It's something you understand. He took a breath. You don't outfly death. You outthink fear. You fly for the ones counting on you, not the ones doubting you. No one clapped. They just nodded. And in that moment, something passed between us, not a story but a standard. Later that evening, one of the cadets approached as I stood beside the ghost. She was small, lean, eyes sharp. Her boots still clean. She didn't ask for a photo. didn't try to shake my hand. She just said, "Permission to one day fly your wing." I looked at her for a long time, then nodded once. Permission granted. The plaque stayed in the hall. Weathering time like all things built from belief. New cadets memorized the angle of the T-38's climb. They began calling the final training flight the Ghost Run. Unofficial. Unrecorded. But sacred. Sometimes I watched from the clouds. They never saw me. But I saw them, dipping their wings as they passed the ridgeline. A small salute in the language of air. And on radar screens across the western seaboard, an old transponder signal would flash once and vanish. A blip no one could trace. But someone always whispered, "She's still flying." That evening, I took off one last time. No clearance. No manifest. Just a whisper in the radar. The ghost climbed clean through the dusk. Her wings caught the dying sun like mirrors of something older than flight. I didn't speak. Didn't log the heading. Just flew west. Into the kind of light that makes everything feel half-remembered. Below, the land stretched barren. Shadows crawled across the stone. The desert held its breath. At 36,000 feet, I throttled back. Let the old engine settle into a sound I'd known longer than most friendships. The yoke sat steady under my palms. No tremor. No struggle. In air control centers across 5 states, techs leaned forward as a familiar blip reappeared. No signature. Just the transponder pulse. Ghost Tango 38. It showed for 12 seconds. Long enough for a few operators to murmur. Long enough for a handful of young pilots to glance at their screens and remember the stories. No one intercepted. No one called it in. They just watched. And in the moment she passed into twilight, she became something else. Not a name, not a number, not even a ghost. Just motion. Presence without demand. A living memory at altitude. Somewhere near the Colorado line, the signal winked out. No distress. No dissent. Just silence. They searched for her the next day, out of routine. Checked logs. Searched corridors. Found nothing. But across the country, young aviators who hadn't been born when Falcon Ghosts first flew whispered of what they saw. Not a threat. Not a rogue pilot. A salute written in air. A goodbye made of restraint. Some stories end with parades. Others end with silence. This one ended where it began, in flight, unseen, unspoken, but never forgotten. Because legends don't ask for recognition. They earn silence. And in that silence, the sky still listens.